we're only going to hire black people. No, the NBA owners say we want the best basketball players, and they end up with a 75% black league. The NFL, it's a cutthroat business. They want the best possible football players. They end up with 50% of the NFL being a black league. We want the best. We want better. We don't care about the color of your skin. We want merit and we want excellence in this country.
If it wasn't for DEI, we wouldn't be giving other people a chance that aren't American or white. That's the whole point of DEI.
No, it's not.
In fact, other people
what is this student talking about, bruh? What is he talking about?
We're good? How you doing? It's hot today, ain't it? Gotta get used to it down here, man. Right before we start, could I please get a signed hat?
Depends.
Do you charge cheddar around here? You charge?
No, I've been throwing out hats for free.
Damn, I just gotta jump next time, I guess. All right, well, I feel pretty American today. We're down to our roots, standing up for what we believe in. I think that's powerful. I'm pretty sure a branch of that is why you're here. I just had one question for you real quick. Probably go into two. Or three or four or five, whatever. So, all right. I've heard you say before that you think diversity is a weakness. I just want to ask you why you think diversity is a weakness.
Well, think about it. Unity is a strength. Diversity is not. If you're trying to create a team, for example, if you guys want to...
So if you guys don't know what's going on here, they're having a debate on DEI policies within the United States. The student supports him, and Charlie Kirk obviously does not support them. He said diversity specifically was a weakness. Let's get into that claim. Without further ado, let's go.
In the SEC again, of which I am pulling for Texas A&M to win an SEC championship again. And every single player is getting different call signs. That is definitionally different. And unity is what creates a good football team. We're brought together by what brings us together, not what is different. And so differences are actually not a strength when you're trying to create a team, a country, a military, a football team, a unit, a corporation, or so on and so forth.
Okay, well, glad we're not a football team. I'm glad we're a country. So
it's a metaphor, right? Cool.
I get you. So you say different call signs. How is me being diverse from someone in the crowd here, us getting different call signs?
Well, I mean, again, it's a metaphor, right?
Well, yeah, but you use a metaphor to explain.
Right, so for example, if someone, I'll try to boil it down for you so you can understand.
I gotcha.
If like Ilhan Omar comes into America and doesn't share our values, doesn't speak our language, and hates America, different call signs, not united, diversity becomes a weakness, not a strength. When you import a lot of people that don't share your values, like we have been from Somalia and from the third world, all of a sudden they say diversity is a strength. Is it really? Is diversity a strength in Minneapolis? Is that really a strength? No. You know what is a strength? The unity we find in being an American, not in being Muslim or in being whatever faction or tribe that you come from.
Okay, so basically, like, just to make sure I'm getting this, if we're all united as one thing,
it's called
not diverse.
E pluribus unum. So it's the Latin phrase, out of many one.
Okay.
So the diversity is our strength is at odds with what's on every one of your dollar bills. On your dollar bill is a phrase, E pluribus unum, which means it doesn't matter your skin color, your background. Our founders did not say diversity is our strength. They said we are all humanity and that is our strength, which is fundamentally different than the phrase diversity is our strength.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought up the founding fathers then, because they weren't all the same person. There was so many people that made up America.
There were many of them, you're right.
Okay, yeah, but there were so many people that made up America. There were so many tribes that were here before us, and they were the whole reason why we even won the American Revolution. So in that sense, diversity would be a strength. In World War II, we used the Navajo language.
We won the revolution because of the French, not because of the Native Americans.
And they're not Americans, so that's still diverse. That still goes to my point.
When Charlie Kirk says diversity is not a strength, let me provide some context to this claim, just based off of what I think when I hear him speak. He's talking about racial diversity is not necessarily a strength. He doesn't say it's a weakness, though, and I think that's where people are getting confused or getting his statement misconstrued. Just because he says racial diversity is not a strength doesn't mean he's implying that there has to be a monolithic of race in any single event. No, he's basically saying we want the best person for the job, point blank, period. It doesn't matter what race or even gender they are, as long as they're the best person. And this young man brought up wars America has had. Judging by those wars, They were picking the best people. They didn't necessarily pick people to participate in them based off of what race they were or where they were from or what gender they were. It was more so we want the strongest people to fight, and they fought. And that's where Charlie Kirk is coming from. This statement can obviously be misconstrued and it can be like misaligned from what he's actually saying, but that's the fundamental flaw of it. He's saying that we want the best people, point blank period. Your race, I mean, it doesn't really take into account on how I'm going to pick the person.
They were European, of which was our ancestry, but okay, what's the point? Fair enough. I'm not.
My point is that I believe that your statement that diversity is a weakness is just simply not true.
Okay, so let's put it on you. Show me an institution, a company, a sports organization that aims to get more diverse for diversity's sake and becomes more excellent. Show me one example.
I'll go even better than that. I'll show you a country that did that. During World War II, we used the Navajo language to counteract German forces. Without their language and the diversity in this country, we wouldn't be able to do any of that.
Okay, they were Americans and American soldiers, and in fact, we looked at them as equal human beings, and we were able to use a different language to our advantage. In fact, what we were fighting for was the promise of e pluribus unum. We were fighting up against Japanese totalitarianism and Nazi totalitarianism. And I will go even a step further. At every organization that tries to make diversity a priority, whether it be Harvard that ignored the Students for Fair Admission course, you lower excellence and you elevate diversity, which lowers the flourishing and the capacity for any organization, company, or group of people to be the best versions of themselves.
So you're very anti-DEI, I suppose.
Oh yes, very much so. I mean, like, for example, do you think the NBA should be half Asian?
I don't care. If they're better than any of the players that come out of our
if they're better,
combine.
exactly. Excellence matters more than skin color. We agree. Yes, better.
We don't agree.
Better, not skin color. That's what we are pro-merit, not pro-DEI. That's the point.
If you believe that is true, then you would support DEI, because DEI is what defends other people that are foreign.
What are you talking about?
DEI is literally pro-diversity. We need these protections to be able to protect people that are different from us.
So how is it that the NBA is 75% black? It's because they're better at basketball than white people generally are. It's not because
because of DEI.
No, oh really? What DEI? No, seriously. What DEI program or policy does the NBA have? Do they have a stated goal saying we're only going to hire black people? No, the NBA owners say we want the best basketball players, and they end up with a 75% black league. The NFL, it's a cutthroat business. They want the best possible football players. They end up with 50% of the NFL being a black league. We want the best. We want better. We don't care about the color of your skin. We want merit and we want excellence in this country.
If it wasn't for DEI, we wouldn't be giving other people a chance that aren't American or white. That's the whole point of DEI.
No, it's not.
To give
in fact,
other people a
DEI
chance.
is at odds with the 14th Amendment. Explain to me. The 14th Amendment says you cannot discriminate based on color, based on race. Actually, it's even more. That's the Civil Rights Act. Going back to the 14th Amendment says, literally at its core, that we have a human equality because we're all human beings.
What is this student talking about, bruh? What is he talking about? And this is where these debates always go south. They always go the wrong direction because the students have different definitions on DEI than Charlie Kirk has. It's like the student has a sort of cognitive dissonance. DEI, in definition, doesn't give every single race an equal chance because of equity. It's an equitable policy. So given that, it doesn't automatically give every single race or group of people the equality or the equal opportunity. The equitable or the equity in DEI is up for interpretation. It just depends on you, on if you believe that the equity is actually being given out fairly. And a lot of Republicans or conservatives don't believe it. A lot of people on the left believe it. They're calling it equity, but the right is saying it's still not fair. If you're lowering test scores for one race over the other race, they're saying that's not fair. It's like they kind of believe it. They believe in DEI when it's beneficial to, I don't know, their agenda, and they don't believe in it when it's not beneficial. So it's just kind of strange to me. It's kind of strange. I do hope the student does a better job of explaining his point of view, but let's continue.
That DEI says, actually, we understand that, but we're going to give more preferences to this skin color over that skin color because diversity is our strength? Explain to me how that works.
It works because there was so many years of just constant turmoil between people that weren't our skin color. So you need to instill extra protections.
Oh, so you need to discriminate against white people now? That's what it is.
How am I discriminating against white people?
Let me give an example. At the Harvard admission, so the Students for Fair Admissions, you're familiar with that Supreme Court case? It's the highest profile Supreme Court case that comes around DEI and college admissions. Are you aware of that?
Go ahead.
You should educate yourself on it. We found out that Asians they got a 300-point deduction on standardized tests versus black students. White people got a 100-point deduction on entrance tests in Harvard University versus black students. This is the Students for Fair Admission Supreme Court case that all of you guys should look up. In fact, in practice, we saw it was much easier to get into Harvard as a black student, regardless if your test scores were lower than a white student, even if your test scores were higher. That is active discrimination against Asian and white people and against everything that we as Americans stand for and that we believe in. That is racism at its core.
I agree that it is racism.
Oh, DEI is racism. Can we agree?
I didn't say DEI was racism.
No, I just said that's racism.
You described something that happened with Harvard admissions.
No, in hundreds of schools.
Okay, but you brought up Harvard.
Because that is the test case. But we saw the documents.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go off of what you said. You said Harvard. You said it was racism. I said I agreed. When Harvard went to court, did they say that DEI allowed them to do that and they only did that because of DEI?
They did it because of affirmative action, which is a outgrowth of DEI. They literally said this was because of our stated affirmative action policies. So affirmative action and DEI are one and the same. They are sister policies of one another. So they said, literally, the Students for Fair Admission course in front of the Supreme Court that was ruled unconstitutional, by the way, is affirmative action constitutional? And found out, no, actually it's not constitutional to preference one racial group over another when another racial group is as qualified, if not more qualified, just because you want college to everyone to look different.
And here's another thing that you probably missed. The student, one of the reasons why he supports affirmative action was because he said that a lot of races, or he was referring to the African Americans, were treated unfairly in the United States for a long period of time, and there was a lot of racial turmoil in the country, basically implying that he believes in affirmative action as a sort of reparation for African Americans. The reason I bring that up because it kind of directly contradicts his initial point that affirmative action actively makes institutions better. Do you support it because it actively makes institutions better, or do you support it specifically for a reparation? Or maybe it's a combination of both, but I would like you to kind of elaborate on that. The thing is this, though. Here's the reason why people really disagree with affirmative action. They disagree with it because it's shown, or there were wrong things that were happening with affirmative action. What I mean by that is while affirmative action was at its strongest, a lot of students were getting discriminated against when it came to college admissions, whether you want to admit it or you don't want to admit it. The Supreme Court already decided it, but that's just the reality. You can't punish a student for having too high grades. You can't reward a student for not having the same grades or test scores. That's just not fair. No matter how you flip it, it's just not fair. If a student scores 13% less on average, if a group of students score 13% less on average using their SAT scores and they're still being admitted at the same rate or same clip as other students, that's just not fair. It doesn't matter if you support affirmative action or DEI or if you don't support it. If you are really an advocate for DEI or any type of African American reparation, you should be paying attention to how these programs are actively helping the black community. Are they helping the black community? Are they making the black community actively better? I don't see any evidence to show for that. I don't. I'm not going to lie. But if you have some, please bring it to me. I would love to see it. But let's continue.
I don't care if college looks different. I care about if you have a competency, if you have excellence, and if you have merit. I care if you are qualified, not whether or not you are black, white, Asian, Mexican. I want the best, not the most colorful.
Okay, but if you get rid of the protections that were protecting those people previously, you're going to allow people that are not merit-based to get in.
I'm not trying to get rid of the 14th Amendment.
You're trying to get rid of DEI.
Well, no, first of all, DEI is not a law. DEI, actually, affirmative action was. DEI is the forceful implementation of racial standarding practices and racial quotas. DEI is basically saying we are going to build a college and organization based on hyper-racialization, not on the pursuit of excellence. At the University of California in order to get a job at the University of California, you had to submit a diversity statement as the first thing that they would look at, and 75% of white applicants were immediately dismissed upon the review of their diversity statement. That is DEI in practice. That is affirmative action in practice. And can't we both agree we want a colorblind society, not a race-obsessed society? Can't we agree to that?
If you allow all of society to be colorblind and if you're throwing away all these years of just constant turmoil towards other races, you're going to go towards...
Wait, so you don't want colorblind?
What do you mean?
Do you want colorblind? Do you want us to get closer to a society where we care about character, not skin color? Don't you believe that the content of character should matter more than skin color?
I believe that you should not be getting rid of protections that are ensuring
like what?
That
Tell me what you are talking.
You're quite literally getting rid of
DEI is not a protection. DEI is an elevation. It's a different thing. DEI is not a protection against discrimination. DEI is an elevation, which is discrimination. DEI is that I'm going to take this group of people and promote them, not based on anything they've earned. DEI stands for didn't earn it, just so you know. And we're going to elevate them to a place in a position of authority or power and circumstance just because they have a different pigmentation. We think that is immoral and wrong, and everything against what we believe in as Americans. Everything.
So would you agree that the current federal government, the administration, that they're not DEI hires, of course? You would agree that they're all there because of merit?
Well, some of them are there because they're friends of the president, but no one was hired because of their race. You know who is a DEI hire? Tim Walz was a DEI hire. They needed a white guy on their ticket because they were doing bad with white men. Newsflash, we still won white men by nearly 30 points. Didn't work. And so they literally only chose Tim Walz because of the color of his skin. Kamala Harris was a DEI hire. They said, we need a black woman on our ticket. Ketanji Brown Jackson was a DEI hire. DEI is when you publicly state a criteria where I want a certain race, I want a certain group, I want a certain, skin color, certain pigmentation. So can you point to one person in the Trump administration that was hired because of their race? One person?
I didn't say because of race.
No, that's what DEI is, though.
All right, then, but I simply asked, do you...
He's making a good point. There were a lot of rumblings around racial demographics and being chosen because of race. I don't know all the details about it. I will say this, though. I will play the devil's advocate here. Even though, just hear me out. Just because something isn't said publicly doesn't mean it wasn't the criteria. And what do I mean by that? Just because no one in the administration publicly said we're looking for a white man for this doesn't mean that didn't happen. The only thing I'm saying here is you don't know for sure how Trump exactly chose his cabinet. Not saying he did do it that way, but however, there is rumblings out there that they were looking for minorities for certain positions in the Biden administration. That's just what it is. They made it a little more public. Not saying that Kamala Harris wasn't necessarily qualified. How do you define a qualification when it comes to a vice president? How would you define that? Would you define it with experience, years of schooling? How exactly would you determine if someone is qualified? Or even Ketanji Brown, how do you determine if she's qualified? I would pose that question. However, I was just playing devil's advocate here. Let me know what you guys specifically think about his claim. I will say, though, the fundamentals of what he's saying is accurate. We should want a merit-based society. You don't want someone chosen for a job that they're not qualified for, whether it's race or if it's even anything. You don't want anyone chosen for a job that they don't deserve. It will make America worse. And it kind of sucks that we've fallen so far when it comes to this stuff. It really does. Because at one point, I would like to believe we weren't like this, but maybe we were always like this. I don't know. Nonetheless, let's continue.
Believe that they're all there because of their merit, that they all should be there.
Yeah, I mean, I've defended all of them, of course.
So yes. So what about when Signalgate happened, when you let a reporter
Say that again?
What about Signalgate, when you let a reporter hear about war plans? Do you think that was merit-based?
Well, first of all, we don't even know who did it. So when it's merit-based, you could still make mistakes. Who did it, actually? Who did Signalgate? Who let the reporter in? Tell me.
It was freaking
Who did
Paul.
It? Who? Who? Yeah, you don't know.
Paul.
Actually, we don't know. No one actually knows. Could have been Mike Waltz. It could have been his staffer. It could have been Dan Caldwell. We actually don't know. So don't come up here professing to know something you don't know, that it's actually still an active Department of Justice investigation. Number two, what's that contention? That people might make mistakes and errors? Yes. But you know what? Pete Hegseth is much more qualified than Lloyd Austin, because Pete Hegseth was a frontline warrior and fighter on the front lines of our war. In fact, I did not hear a single liberal complain about Lloyd Austin when he was hospitalized without telling anybody for nearly a week that interrupted the chain of command and the flow of our national security when Joe Biden was president. This is the most qualified cabinet in American history that we have seen. People that have fought the wars, people that have run businesses, people that have done the most consequential decisions ever. It's an anti-DEI administration ever. Where we look at Joe Biden, you had Kamala Harris that literally has done nothing meaningful in her life, who was only there because she was, a black woman and she fit a specific criteria box. And so we ask the question, when you are trying to build the best, shouldn't the best be the only thing you care about, not the color of one's skin? That is why we are pro-merit and anti-DEI.
Oh, so Kamala Harris was a DEI hire then?
Yes, they said they needed a person of color on the ticket.
Okay.
Obviously.
Not an attorney, right?
You could still be an attorney and be a moron.
Okay. I got you. But a businessman can run for president, right?
We'll win twice and still be your president, yes.
Right. So you believe that someone who was the vice president...
Aren't you with Dean and Parker's crew?
No.
I think you are, actually. No, you're...
No.
Dean, you are not sending your best.
Do you want to see
Dean,
my ID?
You are not sending your best.
I'm not
You're
with
not.
it.
I can't hear you. You're not sending your best. Anyway, last question.
You think someone who's a vice president isn't qualified to be president?
She shouldn't have been vice president in the first place.
Why not? They voted for her.
Okay, yes. The point being is that she was a DEI pick. If your argument, if the hill you want to die on, is that Kamala Harris is the best of DEI, good luck with that. I will rest my case. We want merit. You want Kamala Harris. We're gonna live in a much better country.
So let me know what you guys think about this debate. I think it was a very, very good video. Charlie Kirk does not like Kamala Harris. He doesn't like Kamala Harris. I don't share his same sentiment towards Kamala Harris. I will say this, when she was vice president, she wasn't the loudest vice president, but to say that she was the absolute worst pinnacle of disgustingness, I don't think that's true. I don't objectively think that's true. I think she was a vice president on Biden's ticket. I mean, I don't know. It was just a vice president. Vice presidents generally aren't that loud when they're in office, whether it's left or right. I don't know anything any vice president has done at any time. So I think she did her job. I don't know. I will say this though. The Democratic Party did say they wanted someone of color to be on the ticket. I think that probably saying something like that definitely adds, how do I say this? It hurts her claim. It hurts her claim that she was chosen for merit, because you can't have someone come out and say, "Oh, we're picking someone who's black or someone who's this." Come on, don't do that. That's terrible. That is a terrible thing. And the Democratic Party did that a lot. I don't know why they did that so much, saying that we're picking someone based off of how they look. That was a very stupid thing to do. Nonetheless, let me know how you guys feel about this. My name is LFR George, and I'll see you on the next one.